Hey, good morning, guys. It's Sean here with you, and welcome to the summer devotional series. Today, the topic is spiritual gifts. When we think about spiritual gifts, so often um, it kind of connotes right people that we think are gifted. There's this tendency for us to consider that person who they're a worship leader, they're a teacher, they're some upfront type person. Someone who's gifted is always kind of a standout, and uh, and I think that kind of sends us down a wrong track as it applies to spiritual gifts in particular. Um, and I like what it says in Ephesians chapter 4, and starting off in verse 7, it says this. It says, "But to each one of us grace was given, according to the measure of Christ's gift." And then he goes on in that, going further down, he kind of identifies some of these um, different skill sets we always associate with this issue of spiritual gifts. He talks about apostles, rather, evangelists, pastors, and so on. And we know that's not a definitive or an exhaustive list of what the spiritual gifts are. But I love that it says, "But to each one of us grace was given." And he goes on to define those gifts and say that those gifts are really a grace. And so we start talking about this issue of spiritual gifts. Let's think a little bit more about it in terms of a grace that God has given you. Um, and this can take many different forms, but it's not just the Michael Jordans of the spiritual world, right, that have got spiritual gifts. We all do, and spiritual gifts are not necessarily those ones that are always the upfront types of deals. But that's where I wanted to start. But to each one of us, grace was given according to the measure of Christ's gift. So God has given you a grace. And I like the idea that we might consider that rather than defining and thinking of it as a gift, might better be said, view a spiritual gift as one's contribution to the body of Christ. What's your contribution? What are those things that God has put in you that is meant to edify and to make other people better? See, that's a grace that God has given you. For some of you, that grace is you're fantastic at putting together something that requires a lot of organization. Brad Roll, one of our other men's leaders, is a guy that I've always been impressed with his ability to pull out an Excel spreadsheet and begin to get a calendar together and do a whole lot of things, a lot of moving parts that I'm not good at. But that's a grace that he's been given, and it makes the body of Christ better. And even in your own home, there are graces that God has given all these different people. It might be about mercy. Maybe you're a merciful person. You're easy to quick to forgive. You're quick to make things better. Maybe you're an encourager. That's a grace. That's a gifting that is meant to make other people better when you can come alongside people and always find the silver lining on the cloud. That's an important way to look at this issue of spiritual gifts. Spiritual gifts are meant for everyone else. It's about the contribution that whatever God has given you and given me, it's about how we use that for the betterment of other people and for the body. Next, I wanted to go into Romans chapter 12, and again, we'll take a lot of time on this, but it's neat. Paul just goes through, and in Romans 12, he talks about us being one body made up of many parts. And I know that this is not new. You guys understand this, that the body is diverse. The body of Christ, some people, it says that, could be a hand. Another person is a foot, using the body as an illustration, right? And that not everybody has the same function. Not everybody's going to operate the same way. It's okay. We've got to be careful with that because, once again, in the West in particular, we always elevate people that have got the standout gifts, the people that are up front. But the parts of the body need all those different pieces, right? It's not always just the mouth and the eyes and the, whatever. It's also the feet and the legs that help this body of Christ move, help this body of Christ come together. And so we are all, in fact, knitted like that. We're growing into this place of complete unity and oneness in Him. And then last, in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, again, following the same theme, we see this thing of us all being one body made up of many parts. And that each one, none of us should think any more highly than we ought. But we also ought not think more lowly of ourselves than we should. So I guess that's a question. We think about spiritual gifts. You think about your spiritual gift. What is that grace that God has given you? And then how are you using it? How are you using it in your workplace? How are you using it in your home and within the church? Sometimes we think it doesn't matter, that Maybe you are a person that's an encouragement, or a person that can offer great organizational skills, or another person that's just sensitive to the things that are going on in the spirit. How are you using those? And don't be afraid to use them. You know, again, they don't have to be sexy. They don't have to be big to have an impact. No more than your feet have to be sexy in order to have a huge part in what the body's able to do, right? It has a part. You have a part. And our thing is to think about that and figure out how we're using it. So almost done here. In 1 Corinthians 12, Paul talks about all these spiritual gifts, and he gets into verse 31, and he says, and now I will show you the most excellent way. Again, it's 1 Corinthians 12:31. And going on into 13, Paul says this. Remember, he says, hey, listen, even if I speak in the tongues of men and angels, even if I can understand all the prophecies and all the mysteries, he said, if I don't have love, I'm nothing but like a resounding gong and a clanging cymbal. Now, this is interesting, right? He was saying, irrespective of all the things that you can do that might impress, if I don't have love, it's worth nothing. And so what we learn from this is, love is the foundation. Paul is saying, if you have to make a choice between having love and having the gift of prophecy, choose love. Because if you don't have love, any of the graces, any of the giftings are of no benefit at all. They're just a resounding resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. They're just noise. So as we begin to consider, Lord, how do I use the gifts, the graces that you've given me in the lives of others? Start with love. Pursue love for him, but pursue love with other people. And as we begin to become others focused, the Lord will begin to help us see where the opportunities are to use our graces. I want to finish up with a quick quote from Eric Liddell from the movie Chariots of Fire. And I love this. If you ever want to look it up, he's got some great quotes. It's Eric, Liddle, Eric Liddell. But he was a gold medalist and way back in the day, and a very committed man of God. And I love this. He said, I know that God made me fast, but I also know that when I run, I feel his pleasure. And I think as we consider the way that God has made us, the way God has made you, just like Eric Liddell, God made him fast. He sensed God's pleasure as he was exercising in his gift. And that became a platform to him to preach all over the world. How about you, man? God made you and me in a certain way, very intentionally, with a certain gift. And as you and I begin to walk in that gift and to run in that gift, know this, that we will sense God's pleasure, because he said, you know what, now you're hitting on all 8 cylinders. You're functioning in the way that I intended you to function within the grace that I've given you. So, hey, be blessed today, guys. Hope you have a good day. See ya.